Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Nick. I'm your host, and in today's episode, I talk with Justin Knowles. And Justin and I talk about student ministry. We kind of break down what that looks like at his church, how it's changed since he got there a few years ago, how they build a volunteer culture that they want, creativity, how they infuse that in the ministry, and all of that. We kind of walk through what they do and what that looks like and how he makes that work. And I don't know about you, but I love hearing what other ministry leaders do and just hearing what they do, why they do it, what's working, what's not working. And so we talk about that with Justin. Before we get into that interview, though, I want to let you know that the Orange Conference is just a few weeks away, and I actually have a ticket to give away. It's a ticket that we weren't able to use, and I want to give it away to one person. So to get that, if you're listening when this podcast is recorded, you have just a few days. All you have to do is go to the show notes for this episode. That's nickblevins.com/episode 47. In there, we'll have a link to my Facebook page. If you just go there, like the page, find the post about the free ticket, and comment with your location, where you live, where you serve at your church, I'm going to just pick one person from those comments that is like the page, and I'll do that Friday at 5 p.m. So if you're listening to this when it comes out, you have just a couple days. So if you could use that ticket, jump in there and like the page, leave a comment, and I'll pick somebody on Friday. I can't wait for the Orange Conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have the honor of leading a breakout with Jim Weidman. If you serve in children's ministry or student ministry, you may know Jim. And Jim's just an awesome guy, been a great mentor to me from afar and through our relationship over the last few years. And the cool thing for me is we're doing a breakout about a couple of ministry hacks you can use to be more productive and manage your time and all of that. And so much of that I've learned from Jim, from reading his books, from talking with him. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to do that with him. So if you're there, maybe we'll see you in that breakout. Even if you're not going to be in that breakout, I'd love to know if you're going to be at the Orange Conference. Hit me up and let me know. Maybe we could connect and meet in person if we haven't before. So I'm really looking forward to that. Be sure to go in there if you want to try to win that ticket. Go like the page and leave a comment there, and I'll pick somebody to win that on Friday. Let's go ahead now and listen to my interview with Justin Knowles. Today I'm joined by Justin Knowles. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and your church.
Yeah, Justin Knowles. Been married for 4 years to my wife, Kristen. We have a 2-month-old baby boy, and his name's Graham. And so I'm, tired and kind of sleep deprived and zombie-like. It's great though. Love it. And then I'm at Christ Church of the Valley in Southern California, in San Dimas, California. If you watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Nice. Good reference there.
Yeah. It's a deep one, but our students who go to San Dimas High School have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And it's a sad world we live in. And I've been there for 2.5 years. I oversee junior high and high school at the church, and it's been a journey. It's been fun.
Yeah, and if you fall asleep during the podcast because you're getting no sleep at home with a newborn, that's okay. We'll forgive you. It's fine. We understand. Thank you.
If anything, it's mostly my wife. My wife's a champ, and she's keeping it together, which is as most husbands in ministry, they're like, yeah, my wife's pretty great.
Yeah, definitely. And I can't imagine having to do their job in that whole process, all of it. But even the sleep included, like how in the world do you sleep for 2 hours, wake up for the whole thing's crazy. So I'm trying to forget it right now, even though it's still recent because our youngest is 18 months old. It's not like it was that long ago. So
yeah, you're not even out of it yet.
No, there's still sometimes the waking up in the middle of the night, like, what are you doing? It's dark out. Go to bed. But so thanks for coming on the podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about youth ministry and diving into a little bit about what you do at your church, but creativity and rebuilding and all that stuff. But before we do that, I'd love to hear just like an overview of what youth ministry looks like at your church from a strategy standpoint. What is the programming, all of that, just so we can get a picture of what it looks like.
Yeah. So our church is it's an old church. I think it's like been 60 years old or something like that. And our senior pastor has been there for the last 10 years. It's cool. What's cool about him is that it's his first job as a senior pastor. He was a missionary for 25 years. So our church, as at the core and from the top down, is all about evangelism and reaching out to the community and being a face and a heart and feet of Jesus into the community. So that kind of like bleeds from our senior pastor down all the way into our student ministry. So like strategically, like we're very evangelistic, very outreach focused, while also trying to like disciple the students that come and be a part of things. So the way that we kind of have it structured is we meet on Wednesday nights. And it's junior high and high school together. It's kind of like a hybrid thing. I don't know that many other people that are kind of doing it like this, but 2 years ago, everyone was meeting together for everything. And we started to do like a hybrid service. So we'd actually split for teaching. So like our service is junior high and high school, 7th to 12th grade. At 7:00, we go into first service, do like quick welcome announcements, play a game, go into a greeting time and a new student area, which we could talk about. And then we go into music. And then from music, we actually split into teaching junior high and high school, where they each get their own, do the same series, same topic, just taught in their own context. And then from there we dismiss. So like, that's like a literal quick overview of our service. What we do is we have a really great invite culture. Our students and our leaders they bring a whole bunch of new kids in on a weekly basis, and our goal is to try to connect with them and get them plugged in some way, shape, or form. And we do big events, and I think this is part of the stuff that we'll talk about creativity wise, a part of our like after service events and our strategy behind why we do a lot of those things.
That's awesome. And so that's what Wednesday night programming looks like. We've done that before we've had a fall retreat where we'll have junior and senior high all together, and then they break up for teaching. But we've never had that as part of like our regular programming. Ours meet at the same time, but in different parts of the building. And actually, they sort of rotate a little bit. They use the same large group space and same everything really. But it's like, one's in large group while the other one's in small group, and then the other one's in free time kind of thing. Do you have small groups at this time? Or are they in homes, or what does that look like? I mean, what is that part of this programming or no?
Well, right now we have, I would say like we started small groups 2 years ago, in homes, on different nights, and it's been okay. Hasn't really caught for at least what our culture is and what our church is doing. So I guess that's part of like the strategy of, I think like 30% of our kids right now are in small groups, which is like compared to 2 years ago when there was 0%, I'll take it.
Yeah, sure.
But we actually are gearing up in the fall here for, we're moving to centralized small groups on Wednesday night. So we're actually going to be, attaching small groups before service to our normal programming. So it's like, we're not going to change up our program at all on Wednesday nights. It's still going to be the big room, high energy, but we're actually going to be attaching small groups before service, for those students who want to get involved in that. So it's kind of like a big shift. We just had a big old meeting about it this last weekend with all of our leaders to kind of cast a little bit of vision for it. So it's going to be fun. We're really excited for this new opportunity.
Yeah, so there won't be groups in homes anymore then. It'll be just Wednesday night before the programming.
Yeah, the idea behind that, and obviously we didn't really chat about this, but I could give you like a quick overview of it. The idea is it's a one-stop shop. Did a lot of research with our parents and students and leaders, and just we were asking, because we are a midweek program, so we don't have anything on Wednesday nights or Sunday. For students, we actually encourage our students to serve, which we have I think we have like over 100 kids serving somewhere on the weekends.
That's great.
Which is great. It's just, I love walking around and seeing all of our students serving in kids ministry and being a part of those things. But we actually have our students attend service and service. That's the goal. And what we noticed is that like the rest of our church was weekends, they would go to attend on the weekends, and then they'd have a small group during the week. And what we were asking our students is, hey, we want you to go on the weekends. We want you to come to Wednesday nights. And we also want you to go to in the small group another night of the week. And so we were asking for 3 days. And that's a lot. And so what we're trying to do is kind of make it a Wednesday nights, like a one-stop shop of, hey, you could get your small group, you get discipleship, Bible study, and then you get service and community and friends and fun and the kind of loud and the crazy all in one night. So that's kind of where we're going.
That's awesome. That's our model. The only difference is we're Sunday night is the student time, but it's all there. Now our small groups are after, the programming. So yours is before. Are they going to talk about what you're going to teach? Are they going to talk about what you taught last week? How's that going to work?
Still kind of working it out, to be honest with you. I think right now what we're leading is it's going to be like a before the message. So whatever passage that we're teaching on that night, they will get that passage and talk about with some questions with their group before, and then hear the message later in that night.
Yeah. I like the idea that they're getting into it before you even teach it. They're kind of putting their thoughts together, which I just think is big, as opposed to just always giving them what we think, let you think a little bit. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
That's good.
And to be honest, and this kind of goes into, we can get back on topic, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, with the small groups things or whatever, but it's a part of the strategic part of, our culture and our things that we do for after service. We just didn't think that doing small groups after would work. And we thought it would kill our invite culture. Cause not every student is in a small group, and then they would leave their friend to go to small group after they just invited them, So it's just kind of we just kind of think, we'll do it before service. So it allows us to still do, our after service stuff, for the new student.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'd love to hear about that too. And it's, it was a little bit of a detour, but it's good because I think people love to hear what is especially in student ministry world, because it is different versus maybe children's ministry where it's a little bit more similar church to church. Student ministry world can be very different programming wise. What does it look like? How does it work? So tell us about the new student area and this after service stuff that, that you said helps build the invite culture. I think that's really intriguing.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, like I said, I've been where I'm at for 2.5 years. And for the first 6 months, I just kind of sat back and took notes and kind of, said, hey, really take a good look at what we do. And talking with a lot of our leaders and a lot of our students, we actually 2 years ago quit doing standalone events during the school year. So no Friday night thing, no random Sunday night thing, where we actually said, you know what, we're going to attach all of our events to Wednesday night service. And the thought behind that was, we want our students, what we would see on a Friday night thing, if we go random, and I'm not saying these are bad, I'm just saying this is our strategy, is let's say if we wanted to go cosmic bowling on a Friday night, we would see a whole bunch of friends come, but we would never see them on a Wednesday. We would never see them come back. And so we were just what if we just attach to service or an event to after service? Because then, when they get invited, they say, hey, come to church with me, but there's this really cool event afterwards. And they get to experience church. They get to experience what we get to experience every Wednesday night. And then we do a fun event after service that will last, we'll get out around 8:30 and it'll go till 9:30. I'm a really big fan of, there's nothing worse than an event that should have ended 20 minutes ago. So we keep it short and sweet, leave them wanting more a little bit. And we do a hard cut at 9:30 and invite them to come back next week. So we try to do that once a month or once every other month, where we have an event after service. So that way our students can invite a friend. That's
awesome. It's funny, we had a similar shift a couple of years ago, but I feel like we've run out of good ideas for those. So I'd love to hear what are some things you've done, and which ones have worked really well. Are there any that kind of flopped a little bit or whatever? Yeah, so we do. So part of our church, our senior pastor, as a church as a whole, we have this thing called a one life.
that our pastor believes that the best evangelism is done one-on-one through relationship. And so like every believer at our church is challenged to have a one life. That's one life that they're investing into who does not know who Jesus is. So we've taken that concept and challenge our students, constantly asking, who's your one life? Who's your one life? And then a couple nights of the year, we do these things called one nights. And it's the one night where you bring your one life. And we do a kind of it's usually, those ones are like at fall kickoff. We take a break over Christmas, and then we come back really big with a one night, and then we do like a summer kickoff. And the idea is that they bring their one life, and it's like a big fun event. And we've done a couple things that have worked so far. We've only done we've started doing it 2 years ago, so I think we've done 5 total in the last 2 years, because we don't want to make it too crazy. But one of the biggest and most successful ones is a silent disco. Have you heard of these things?
I have not.
Have you seen them?
That sounds fun.
It's the best. I think we use the company. It's called Silent Storm. Easiest event. It makes you look really great, but it's no joke. It's probably one of the easiest events I've ever done, because they do everything for you. But basically, you get headphones. They send you headphones. You plug it like a transmitter into your laptop from a playlist from like Spotify or something, and you basically have a dance after service. But the only music that is coming through your headphones. So you walk into the room and it's like dead silent, and people are going nuts. You're like, what is happening? But then you put on the headphones, and then you hear everything that everyone else is hearing, and it's pretty great. And it's just a party, and students love it. And they're just singing at the top of their lungs, and then you take off your headphones and there's no music, but everyone's still singing. And it's just a good time. That's so funny. We've done that. That was a fun one. That students, we did it like a glow night or whatever. So it was like silent discos, wear neon, black lights, all that kind of stuff. We do this event called Fall Flannel Festival, where our students love flannel. And so we just play off that. So it's a night where you wear flannel, and it's in the fall, and Nice. It's a big festival. And we have, pumpkin carving. It's pumpkin everything. It's around like Thanksgiving. So pumpkin carving, pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin pie, pumpkin cookies, pumpkin bowling. We just kind of come up with all these random festival type games, and we have fire pits and hot chocolate snacks, kind of like that photo booth, the whole thing that we got. So that's another big one that our students just love. We've done backyard barbecue. So had an ice cream truck come and have ice cream for everybody. We barbecued burgers and hot dogs. We've had all these inflatables, hamster ball, human hamster ball type situation. It's just a good, stuff like that just trying to build community after service. Because in all of it's we don't just do it just to do it. But most of it is just because we know that the most important ministry that happens is, the 30 minutes before and after service, where leaders are interacting with students. So I feel like my job as a leader is to give our leaders opportunity to hang out with students and make connections. So that's what all of these events are all about, is just to get our leaders face to face and have some fun with students, because I think fun breaks down walls. And it allows for new students who never do church to kind of be like, man, church is not that bad. I thought it would be different.
Now, would you say that these events and kind of this part, and we'll probably dig into the new student area too, but that and then just the one life thing are what shapes and really makes the invite culture? Because I would say a lot of churches don't have that and would love to know how do you do it. But it sounds like these two things are a big part of it.
Yeah, I think just the actually challenge, when students think invite, they think they have to invite their whole school, or stand on their lunch table and say, hey, everyone, come to my church. That's not,
yeah.
I feel like if you kind of make it very practical, they're like, hey, this year, who's the one person that you never thought would come to church, but maybe they're just waiting for you to ask them, or don't say no for them, really begin a relationship with them. And know them, get involved in their life. And once they see what you do, like, who knows, maybe an invite will be easier. And it kind of makes it a little bit more practical. And a lot of students go like that I've chatted with who actually invited their one life and like, they're like, I could do that, like that. I could actually invite one person, because if in reality, even if half our kids invite one person, like you'll see huge growth.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's just making it a little bit more practical and like really challenging students to like step up and say, hey, like go out on a limb and get out of your comfort zone and ask. Like the worst they could say is no. It's not, they're not going to not be your friend anymore. And part of it too is just, I think the event culture is, it's strategic on our end, but I think it definitely has helped our invite culture, because I think my job as the leader of our ministry is like, one, I want our students who call our place home to make it feel like this is like they're proud of it. Like, man, I love my church. And then two, that they feel comfortable enough to invite their friend to come. Because they're not going to invite their friend to something if they don't even like it. You know what I mean? Like, so yep. Students are so community driven. So if they like where they're at, they want their friends to be a part of what they like. So I think those two things are pretty big as far as like creating that culture. One, do they like what you do? Because you might like what you do, but what if they don't like what you do?
Yeah.
So it's like really listening to, I really lean on my student leadership team to help me with like events of like running it by them.
Your student leadership team, can you describe what that is real quick?
Yeah, student leadership team, we meet every other Sunday night. So it's a group of students. You have to apply for it, and you have to be nominated for it. So leaders will nominate students at the beginning of the year to say, hey, I think you should apply for student leadership. Here's an application. Like, so our leaders are actually handing out applications to students saying, I think you should do this. And then I meet with them every other Sunday night, and we do a whole bunch of different things. It's almost like another small group where we do like some leadership stuff, but like go through the Bible. But then they also help plan and organize events. And then we do, and this is something that we could talk about too, is one of the biggest things that they do is a series called You Own the Night. I actually got this from when I was at Saddleback Church. They do this series called You on the Weekend, and I stole it and I made it my own, as most people do in ministry.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
And that's how I do it. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
And so we took this series, and our students run the series. We're actually about to do it in like 3 weeks. And it's like a high school takes over the night, and they plan it, and students do everything. There's no adults on stage for 4 weeks. They do all the music, they plan the service, they pick the game, they run the game, they run the event after service, they teach, like they do everything. So that's part of what our student leadership team does. And that's part of also part of the creative part of which we do our programming, because it's super fun, it's super challenging. But we see more students at those events than we do if I were to do the same series.
Yep, for sure, because they're involved, they're invested. That makes a lot of sense. Before we talk about creativity and how to foster that and infuse that in youth ministry, real quick, what's the new student area? What does that look like? How does it work?
It's super simple, to be honest with you. We have like an area where we, during our greeting time, during service, we always say, hey, if this is your very first time, we would love to meet you. We have our leaders in the back of the room, and we have a gift for you. And it's honestly, it's a full-size candy bar. That's it. But they love it. And so we say, go to the back of the room, a leader will meet you. And we have them fill out like a little carbon paper thing. It's super simple. Name, school, cell phone, who brought you. And then at the very bottom, it says like leader that introduced them, like, it's like a leader, whoever it is that introduced them. So one, we get their info, and then I actually personally will text them like a message saying, hey, thanks for coming. And then, but our leaders too, whoever met them that night and filled out the form, they are responsible for following up with them before next Wednesday, before our next service. So that way they kind of get two touches before next Wednesday. They get one from me, the pastor, and then one from our leader who met them. and then say, hey, glad to meet you. Hope that you get to come, come again next week. And we do that, one, just to make the connection, but two, I like it because we just talk with all of our leaders. The last 3 weeks, we've had at least 10 brand new kids come. And that just shows me that students are actually inviting friends. The students are it's a good way to keep track of are our students, if we're really outreach focused, are our students really bringing people? And then it allows us to kind of keep us accountable in how we're reaching out in the area.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, now would you say, you say that the invite culture is pretty good. Do you feel like you have a good number of students who are part of your programming, but their families aren't part of the church yet? That's an entryway, I guess is what I'm saying, is you're reaching some students, and that's the only part of the family you're reaching right now. But, hopefully the whole family gets reached.
If I were to put a percentage on it, I would guess that we're probably somewhere around 70% would be called their church home, their family goes to the church, and a good 30% are just kids who were invited by people.
Yeah.
And their family doesn't really do church.
Yep. That's good. That's awesome, though. That's great.
Yeah, I feel good. I feel good about that.
I think that in many ways, when I grew up going to church, I feel like that was a huge part of youth ministry. But I don't know that it has felt the same since then. And I don't know if it's just changing schedules and people are busier now, or if in our setting where we don't reach 1 or 2 high schools, we reach 6 or 7. And so it's and you can't get in them, where I am. It's not like you can go hang out at the school and make connections there as a pastor. That's not allowed. So I don't know if it's all that too, but I feel like
really you're not allowed to do that.
No, we can't do that. You can find if you had some kind of a personal connection, we have teachers who come to our church in local schools, but even then, it's something that's not allowed. And I hear in other parts of the country, I guess where you are, and sometimes in the South, you can still do that. It's not the same here. You got to find some other ways to make it work.
Gotcha.
It's interesting.
Gotcha. Yeah. It is. That is interesting. I guess it depends on the school. There's a couple of schools I can't get into because the administration is kind of difficult, but
yeah,
for the most part, I guess it does help when the principals are either elders at their churches or whatnot. So
yeah, that would be nice. Yeah,
I think that is helpful.
We, if you have, the one thing that is helpful here is if there's a student-led group, then that opens all kinds of doors, but it has to be student-led internally. You know what I mean? It can't be created and led by some outside group or whatever. So if they do that, then they can open a lot of doors and invite you in and things like that. So that's the approach a lot of churches take, is try to get their students to lead things on campuses, which is really cool. And they can do that. So in terms of creativity, how do you infuse creativity in youth ministry programming? What does it look like? How's the process work? What does it turn out? How does it turn out? What does it create in the end?
Yeah, I think as far as creativity in general with our programming, I think we kind of touched a little bit on it with our events, just to kind of think what our students actually like. As part of actual our service, we have a team that we meet with on Thursdays. And we have a team of people that just kind of sit down and we review last week's service, and then we talk about the following service. And I think what makes our DNA, because we launched a new campus too, and so we've been chatting with our other guy who just got hired for the student ministry out there, as we've been chatting through what makes us us. And a part of that is it's a message, it's music, and then just some sort of element of fun. Whether that's a game, whether that's we've done, I'm all about the little bits. We have a saying in our youth ministry of at least on our team with our volunteers, is anything for the bit, so that means putting on a tutu and I become the free lunch fairy. Not my idea, but it's just
sure?
it's not that's not something I want to do, but little stuff to I came out, we gave everyone a raffle ticket. I came out in a tutu and with a wand, and I was the free lunch fairy, and we draw the raffle ticket, and then whoever won that ticket the next day on Thursday, we would take them lunch at their school for all their friends. Nice. Just stuff like that where, I think the goal, like with like programming and like fun and the creativity part of stuff, is like if a student were to walk in for the very first time and they were coming in kind of with walls up, like arms folded, like because they don't do church, and if I could get them to, whether laugh or have a little bit of fun within service, or they're like, oh, that was cool, and they leave with their arms unfolded, like to me, like that's a win. As far as like who we're trying to reach is like that student, like there's definitely a fine balance between like trying to be engaging the believer, or it's challenging the believer and engaging the new person. So like it's like you want to not only focus on new students, but you also want to challenge the students who do believe in Jesus and who want to grow. And so like part of our creativity comes from, one, our leadership team, and two, our student leadership team. And I guess like you're asking about the process, right?
Yeah, it'd be great to hear how often, like how do they give input, how often, from both parties, I guess.
Yeah, so we do a couple things. We do like kind of two big meetings, one with our leaders and one with our student leaders, and we do the same thing. The idea, like the thing is, like I know I have good ideas, but I don't have the best ideas, and the best ideas come from team and like bouncing ideas off each other. At least that's how I work. So what we've done in the past is, if you could kind of picture it with me, I've taken a whole wall, and I'd put up different categories of things. So one category would be sermon series. One category would be after service events. One category would be sermon and illustrations. One category would be songs or covers. One category would be like takeaways. So what's like a message, like after you give a message, here's something that you would actually take with you, like a penny or whatever. What's an in-service games that, students would like, and it kind of whatever category, whatever you use in programming across the board. And for like a series, so like let's say we do a 4-week series, and here's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and it goes down on the other side, and kind of almost kind of creates like a grid. So like I put tape, so like it kind of makes like a grid, and I give everyone sticky notes, and I say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, we're going to come up with as many ideas as possible for each of these categories for each week. And so for both students and leaders, we'll take the sticky notes, and they'll go and they'll literally like litter this board, this grid, with ideas that go with week 1 for this takeaway, week 2 for this after service event, and like literally just kind of go nuts. And then after 20 minutes, the whole wall is full of all of these ideas that by yourself, there's no way that you would think about some of these things. And then we would literally go through afterwards and walk through each of the ideas and literally just take down all of the bad ones, or the ones that no one has like energy towards. But what you end up leaving up on the board is like a whole bunch of different, like really good ideas that people are bought into. And then from there, like our team will take those ideas and see how we could implement them within our service. So it just is like, it's fun, it's involved, people feel like they're invested into it. But some really great ideas have come out of that.
That's awesome. And how often is it again?
We do it once a year.
That's what I thought. It was once a year. So do you come back to these teams again with kind of like monthly planning or series planning or even weekly planning? Or is that mostly they give their input there?
They give like the overall input. And then once we get closer to whatever date it is, we'll start to plan a little bit more. Because we have our whole calendar year planned out, and events and stuff like that. So as it comes closer, we'll start to meet about it.
That's good. That's good. So I think what I love about that too is you're getting input from different voices. The idea that you're brainstorming all those things too, the different categories, is really helpful, as opposed to, hey, let's come together and just brainstorm this one series or this one event. I think that's really helpful that you're hitting all those things at once. So if you don't have an idea about that series, that's great. Maybe you got something over here and over there. That's probably good. Right.
It kind of creates like it allows really everyone to speak into it, even if they don't have I've had students or leaders like that literally put one thing in each box, but all of their ideas are like taken down. But then there's like a couple people who just have like 2 solid ones, and we end up using them, and we're like, dang, this is what it's about. It's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. So you, like you said, you've been there 2.5 years, right?
Yeah.
And with the little bit of time we have left, I'd love to just ask, what has it been like in the 2.5 years, coming in, new person, rebuilding the ministry, not necessarily because like it was in shambles, the idea of rebuilding, but, crafting it the way you want, molding it into the ministry you want it to be. How have you done that? And for anybody that's listening, maybe they're in a similar situation. They're 6 months in, they're moving to a new role, or they've been there for years, but it's not what they want. What would you say to them and how they can kind of rebuild a ministry from scratch?
Yeah, I think so. Just even like reflecting back on like when I first got there, it just wasn't a culture that I wanted. So, anything with, and if you know this, if you've been in ministry for any amount of time, that culture takes time to build, and a lot of repetition of like saying, here's what I want, here's what we're looking for, here's what I want, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want, here's what I'm looking for. And like reminding everyone of like, this is what you want and this is what you're looking for. And so I remember like just even taken back of the first thing I did it starts with our leaders. Because I felt like a lot of our leaders were glorified babysitters and not leaders investing into students. And I wasn't saying it wasn't anything against them. That's just what they did and how they thought they were supposed to be. So like that wasn't like, that wasn't use my own name as an example of like, oh, that wasn't Justin. That was the guy who told me to shut up, like during service. So like that was like a lot of the culture, at least with our leaders. So we started to, the first thing I did was up our leader involvement, and had everyone reapply, and kind of rewrote our volunteer, like what our expectations are for leaders. And through that process, a whole bunch of people, it was actually really nice because if it does begin with your leaders and the culture that they set, is that it allowed an offboarding process for the leaders who were just sticking around until a new leader got there, myself. And then it allowed them to like step back and be like, you know what, I'm good. I'm not going to come back. But it also like helped raise the bar for the leaders who were sticking around and say like, all right, like here's the new expectation and I'm going to be up to that. And then from any leader coming on board, like they knew from the very get-go of like what we expected and what we were looking for within our leaders. So that's like the first thing that I did. And I'll be honest with you, it was hard. Like it wasn't not everyone was really happy about that because a lot of people don't like change and they like the way that they do stuff. So just kind of working through that process was both good and it was hard at the same time. But then from there, like as we're onboarding all these new leaders is, fun, and the culture. Like I really do believe that if our leaders, if they really do enjoy being around each other, like it bleeds into students. And so like if our students could walk in and say, man, this place, like the people here actually like each other. The leaders here, it looks like they enjoy being here and they have fun together. Like, and that just bleeds, into our student ministry across the board. So when we started incorporating like games and music and opened up the cafe, we have a cafe on our campus. And so we opened that on Wednesday nights. We have like Nine in the Sky, Gaga Ball, like all these like the camp type of games out on our patio. And we actually like had a part of our leader training. We played all of the games as we introduced them. So that way our leaders knew how to play them all. But like all of our leaders played to get them together first. And then they taught the students how to play. So like, it's little stuff like that of like, it started with our leaders first. And over the last 2 years, I really do think our leaders have fun together. We just had a leader meeting, this last weekend. And I'm just sitting back. I remember I was just sitting back and like, man, they're just enjoying having fun, having lunch, talking, telling stories. It's a good, I think it begins with that first.
You set a new expectation is one way to say it when you came in. New expectation for the ministry, new expectation for being a leader. And then I'm guessing you lost a number of people in that transition.
Yeah. So like, I think we started with like 20 leaders when I got there. in that process, I was down to 6.
Ooh, yeah, that's a lot.
And then we built, like, I think right now our roster is like 40. So like we've built more, like and not only just, it's not just warm bodies anymore. It's just like they're people who are there and they know what we want, or hoping our adult leaders like what they do, like actually invest into the lives of students. And so they're more bought in than I think ever.
How long did it take to go from the 6 to where you are now? I mean, was that 2 years basically?
Yeah, 2.5 years, my time being there. Yeah, and we need more for that centralized small group stuff. So we're like on a really big like leader recruitment phase right now.
Yeah.
So so like to go back to like the original question, like that's one thing. And then the other thing that we did to rebuild it is like we really took a look at our program and kind of like have like a 3-year plan. Like, I'm all about, seeing here's the 3 steps, like longevity of like, here's what we need to do, and I told my boss, my bosses, the higher ups, of like, hey, give me 5 years and then we'll see like a healthy ministry. But it's going to take that long to get to that point. So like we started really looking at like 3 years of, year 1, we just focused on program. We tweaked, we looked at it, we tore it apart, we restructured it. That's when we split junior high and high school for teaching. We kind of just, okay, what works for us? And what was working is not working anymore. So we kind of like year 1 did program. That's all we did, unapologetically. What about small groups? No. We're doing program right now. We're gonna nail this down, because then once that's good, then students will come to program, but they stick for relationships. So as like we, kind of come and make our program great, more students will come. And as we have better leaders, they stick around because of the relationships that are forming. Year 2 is small groups. Well, let's launch small groups. Let's get them in community. And then year 3 is serving. Let's focus on getting kids serving. And that's like what I mentioned of, we did a huge push on serving this year. And like we have like a third of our students serving somewhere in our church on the weekends. So that's kind of like our 3-year, that's what we've been focused on the last 3 years. And we're still kind of in that process. So like anyone rebuilding, like take a step back, like really evaluate, take notes, tear it apart. And to be able to like really objectively look at what it is that you're doing, and are you doing stuff just to do it, or are you trying to be really effective in the things that you do? Those are the 2 questions that we asked a lot.
That's good. And I like how you focused on, one thing at a time, as opposed to, I need to improve it all. But even more than that, in some ways you focused on one thing at a time, and maybe, I don't know, did they have small groups before and you took them away, or did it just not exist and you added it later? But even that idea could be helpful. Like, hey, even if you're doing 5 things, do 3 things now, or do 1 thing now, and then add the other things back, so you're making them strong. That's a good approach.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, we get in the trap of like, oh, I need to make everything great right now. And it's just is like, no, like if you, at least in my, and so our strategy of our church as well, like we focus on 3 things. We focus on our service. We focus in on getting people in the community, and then we get them to serve. Like if those are the 3 things that we focus on and do those 3 things well, like we could add a little bit of stuff here and there, but like those, if I want to do a couple things, I'd rather do a couple things really, really well, than do a whole bunch of things okay. So like that's kind of like our mentality on it, and we're definitely not there yet, but it's definitely helped us be focused, and trying to reach more students, because then we kind of know what we're doing, and kind of know what we're looking for specifically.
Yeah, and you did like you said, you did 1 thing a year, and I just think my experience, our team read the book 4 Disciplines of Execution, which was a great read. It's like a business book, but the core point of the book is you're better off taking 1 thing and focusing on that and moving it forward with a clear plan and accountability than you are 3 things. Like I could see where if you said, hey, even these 3 things, this having a gathering or service, community, and serving, if you tried to improve them all over the 3 years, you probably would not have come as far as you did doing 1 a year. even.
Right.
The book would kind of suggest that. And my own experience has shown that too. I feel like things crawl when I've got multiple things I'm trying to move forward at one time, versus one. That's good. That's awesome. Cool. Well, this has been really, really helpful. I think people I love hearing, what you do, why you do it, what you're adding, what's working, what's not, all that kind of stuff. This is really helpful. But if people have more questions or they just want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. If you want to follow me on social media, it's Justin Knowles 3, both on Twitter and Instagram. And I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of my thought processing on the Download Youth Ministry blog. So downloadyouthministry.com there. And I write a few times a week for their website. So those are the two spots you could find me. Yep,
it's good stuff. I'm sure everybody listening knows of that. If not, I don't know what rock they've been hiding under, because you all are creating some great resources and content, and it's just really, really helpful. So thanks for what you're doing, and keep up that great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And, now you can make sure you get some sleep now with your young one.
Heck yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. I don't know about you, but I love hearing what other student ministries do. It's a little different than children's ministry, because I think obviously all ministries can be different and different approaches and strategies, but there seems to be more or fewer, I guess, models in children's ministry and a lot more models in student ministry, or at least tweaks to that model that can make a big difference. So that was a lot of fun. And I've been talking with a number of other high school ministers actually in the last couple of weeks, just wanting to learn from them what they do, how their ministry works, where they feel like they're experiencing some momentum and some wins, and where they're struggling. I think that's a common conversation. So I'm actually going to have at least one or more of those folks that I've been talking to on the podcast as well, so you can hear the same conversations we've been having, because it's been really helpful to me, and I think that'll be helpful to you as well. Coming out of this interview, here are a couple things that I would do. Here are some action items you can try. One is to try some events that take place during your normal programming, like Justin talked about. So you can get students to invite their friends on the campus or wherever you have your student ministry programming. The thing I love about it when we do it is it's not as much extra work as a standalone event is when it happens at another time. So I love that. Plus, I love getting them to our normal program as well. Another action item could be to gather a team and brainstorm everything. Just like Justin does, brainstorm everything you do and give yourself a lot of great ideas to use going forward. You can get all our show notes and everything at nickblevins.com/episode 47. You can download everything there, including there's that link. If you want to try to win the Orange Conference ticket, you can click that and like the Facebook page and leave a comment there. In the next episode, I talk with one of our small group leaders from our church. We have amazing small group leaders. We're so blessed. They just do a great job. And one of them is Shannon Pianowski. And Shannon and I talk about what she does as a small group leader. And actually, Shannon leads a group of elementary kids, first graders, and she leads a group of juniors in high school that she has led since they were in 6th grade, which is pretty amazing. And so we talk about what she does, what makes her, in my opinion, a great small group leader. And so we kind of break that down. I think it'll be helpful for you as a ministry leader, whether you're leading children's ministry or student ministry. But I also think it's something you could consider giving to your small group leaders and letting them listen to it as well. They may hear some things that they can take away and use, as a small group leader in their context. So be sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss that episode. And we'll see you next week in the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.